Hi, my name is Tansy Brook. I'm from Lumo Bodytech. I think the timing is actually perfect for this because there are so many themes that have been going through the presentations this evening that I think are right on target to what we're seeing. Our company, Lumo Bodytech's been around since 2011, and what we focus on is using technology to monitor and improve biomechanics. There's a couple of different ways that we do that. So just to talk a little about sort of the current status of wearables. Within the last couple of years, as I'm sure many of you know, wearables have become very popular. Moving from sort of these very rudimentary step counters to something that's very sexy, and a lot of that has to do with the user interface. It's a culmination of technologies, everything from Bluetooth 4.0, the prevalence of mobile devices, and also, of course, a number of cheap sensors. But we're sort of at a point where people are saying things like, okay, well now what's next? Because in a lot of ways, these devices have tracked things that we have in the past, but that's sort of where their assistance ends. So really the next vision of wearables is how do we change behavior? Because ultimately that's what people are really interested in. So wearables 2.0 is sort of the realm that our company focuses in. And a lot of that has to do with individualization. How can you cater the product to the individual user? Focusing a lot on behavior change. So trying to bring in the intervention at the right time to try to change the behavior in a small way over time. We focus a lot on tracking the metrics. So for our company, we track posture through a posture coach and activity tracker sense that we have. So that's sort of a static biomechanics product. And then the other thing that we track is running form. So we have a product that tracks your form when you're running. And this is really exciting because when you start tracking things that have been previously untrackable, you start discovering information that in the past didn't exist, which gives us much deeper insight. And of course, in parallel integration, I think we saw a lot of great examples of that here tonight. I don't think it's a question of if the parallel integrations can happen or whether or not people want it. The question is overcoming the technology barriers and trying to figure out the best ways to implement it in what products in order to help with adoption. But I think as the technology improves, we'll absolutely see more and more of that. And of course, the last thing is the data, sort of the lessons that we can learn from the data. Having these new tools that we can measure things that have been previously unmeasurable allow us to detect trends and find insights that previously were unknown. So I think it's important to start telling you a little bit about the background of our company. Any of you who've worked in startup companies, you know how much energy and how much work and how much exhaustion it takes. And you have to really be passionate about what you're doing. And so we were lucky that all of our team and actually our co-founders sparked this idea from a very personal problem. Andrew, who's one of our co-founders, had suffered with back pain for his entire life. And our CEO, Monisha Prakash, and he and our other co-founder, Charles, would literally get to the point where they are having meetings with him in the incubator that they were working with, where he would be laying on the ground because he was in so much pain that he couldn't handle standing up. And at that time, Monisha recommended him posture classes. You should really try posture classes because she was married to a spine doctor and knew a lot about how posture can impact your back health. So he took posture classes and it basically completely changed his life. And to this day, a lot of the times we joke that our company was founded to try to fix Andrew. Because first he had issues with posture, and he's also a runner now, so our newest product is actually a running product that he's very excited about as well. So really I think one of the things that's exciting about what we're doing is that it's a problem that so many people know exists, but it's something that it's so difficult to keep top of mind. So for example, to start posture. Everybody knows that this is not good for you. Everybody knows that slouching at your desk for hours every day is bad for your neck and bad for your back, and it's actually becoming more and more prevalent. It's becoming a much bigger issue. We even see a lot of that reflected in some of the interest with corporate wellness groups because they're really interested in trying to improve employee performance, but also reduce the incidence of back injury and of back pain overall. Because we see that 70% of people suffer from back pain at some point in their life. It's the number one reason for missed work days. And some of you may have seen this. This is sort of the new trendy term, text neck, where all of us who are sitting down, leaning over, texting on our phones tend to bend over, which is terrible, terrible for your neck. So hopefully what we'll all learn to do is move our phones up so that you can rest it on your chest, but make sure that you're not bending your neck down, you're moving your hands up whenever you're actually doing it. Although you will have this experience where people will start kind of jumping in front of you because they think that you're photobombing and taking a picture. So in the beginning, it's a little bit strange to have people kind of jumping in front of your phone thinking that you're taking a picture. Anyway, it's great for your neck. So what the Lumo Lift does is it is a combination of a sensor and a mobile app. And I'm actually wearing one right now. So this is what we call the Smarts, and this is what we call the Beauty. So this is a magnetic class. This is a 3-axis accelerometer. And what you do is you put it on your body and you actually set the baseline. You put the sensor on and you double press it in order to set the baseline. And then it can tell when you sort of deviate out of your ideal posture, which is actually extremely important because there isn't a perfect posture. And so really what you want to do is make sure that it's something that's comfortable for you, but that you're moving towards a more ideal form. And one of the gentlemen earlier today brought up this point about, perfect form when it comes to, weightlifting or things like that, or perfect form when it comes to running, or perfect form when it comes to posture. A lot of the products that we have now are focused more on getting you less bad. So maybe you won't get to 100%, but really if we can get you to 80%, then you're in a much better spot than you are if you're slouched over in this terrible posture. So that's really a big focus. So we have the sensor, and it vibrates whenever you start to slouch and just reminds you to maintain that good posture. And you can actually set the delay either from immediate feedback to a couple of minutes if you want a little bit of a delay. And then, of course, it connects to an iPhone app that tracks sort of your standard activity, steps, calories, distance, things like that. But it also has this new metric that we created called posture hours, which is kind of tricky because when you're measuring new things, you have to create new metrics, and you have to educate people on how to understand them and how to use them. And so I think around wearable devices, that's one of the biggest challenges, is trying to figure out how to do that effectively. And there's a lot of testing that goes into that. What we did for posture hours actually is there's a lot of research that shows that if you're in posture for more than 30 minutes, it significantly elevates your stress levels, fear, lots of other things that are really negative. And then we also looked at, from our user database, how successful people could be, and found a metric that you can encourage people to be successful, but it's not so unattainable that they get discouraged. And so I think one of the really important things around the new version of wearables is trying to find this balance between how do you encourage people but still maintain your credibility. So a couple other things you may not know about posture and why it's so important. So posture is important for everything from general health, helps you to breathe better, helps impact your emotional state, helps you to digest better circulation, all these different things. It also helps you to feel better. So if everybody could just take a minute and stand up real quick, if you do me a favor. I don't know if you guys, there's a great TED Talk by Amy Cuddy where she tells everybody that you should power pose by putting your hands over your head for 2 minutes. Or if you don't want to do this because you're sure, unsure, or whatever, then you can put them on your hips and do Superman, which is also very good. But she's done a lot of work. She's a Harvard researcher, and they've done a lot of research showing that just by 2 minutes of power posing, it actually elevates, you guys put your arms down, it actually elevates the testosterone in your brain and lowers the level of cortisol. So you can literally not trick your body, but coax your body to feel better, to be more confident, just by sort of holding the right posture. So that's something that's really important for the way that you feel. Communication, I think all of you probably have noticed that if you're having a conversation with somebody and they're speaking like this instead of speaking like this communicates something very different. So it's very important for that. And then last, appearance. There's a lot of different studies that show people look more attractive if they have better posture, they look more confident. So there's all these different additional benefits to posture. If you have to sit down, you can. Thank you for sharing with me for that. couple of quick things that I think is really neat because we've had these products in the space for a couple of years. And some of my favorite things about working with startup companies is when you start seeing how people use the product and how it impacts their lives. And so a couple of different power user stories. Tom actually works for a senator on the East Coast, and he purchased the Lumo Lift because he was really interested in developing presence and credibility. He's like, I want to make sure that I'm communicating strength and confidence in my job environment because I'm used to seeing the senator do it every single day when they're presenting. And actually his wife, he bought one for his wife as well because she's about 4'5" and she teaches middle schoolers. And so he said, I'm going to help you. He bought it for her to make sure that she was, maintaining this strong posture so that she controls these really rowdy kids that are taller than her. Sudoku, really, really common case. He's an engineer, spends hours a day working on his computer like this. As more of us do that, it's extremely damaging for your back. People at a younger and younger age are having back problems. Actually, even kids a lot of the time are starting to have back problems because of the time spent over video games and then also mobile devices. Dave has suffered with scoliosis his whole life, but he was able to use the Lumo Lift to sort of stabilize himself and make sure that he holds that good posture. And last, Carol, it's one of my favorite stories. She is a breast cancer survivor, and she went through a double mastectomy where the doctor told her, you need to make sure to maintain good posture after the surgery, even though it hurts, so that the scar tissue can heal properly, because if not, you can develop sort of a permanent hunch, and the tissue would be fixed that way, and then she would have difficulty with that. So I think one of the coolest things about new technologies, and one of the things I'm excited about for the companies that presented here tonight, is when you start getting it out there and people start using it, they do things with it that you would have never imagined they would do with it, which is very exciting. So another thing mentioned earlier about data and the potential of data. So we do have the largest database of postures in the world currently, which is great. And from that we've found, on average, women tend to have 20% worse posture than men. Wow. So there's a lot of different reasons this could be. Some of it we think has to do with developmental stages. A lot of time when women are going through adolescence, there's a lot of reasons they tend to hide themselves, kind of lean over rather than stand up tall. Also, men often in sports are encouraged to sit up straight or stand tall. So some of it's socialization. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about this is think about women in the workplace and sort of the whole idea of leaning in as a woman. If you're a business professional, if we're having this poor posture and we're hiding ourselves and closing ourselves off and damaging our credibility, how is that communicating for us as business professionals and vice versa? And that's relevant for any gender. Another thing that is really interesting is on average, we see that people tend to spend 2 minutes in bad posture for every 1 minute of good posture. So these are people who are our user database, so they're interested in posture. So this is a best case scenario. So just to give you an idea of how terrible people's posture tends to be. And then lastly, I'm sure all of you guys are probably familiar with the 2 p.m. slump where you go have lunch and then afterwards you're trying to stay asleep. You're trying to not fall asleep at your desk. We've actually been able to see that in the posture data. As people get tired, they tend to slouch more later in the day. So the most recent product that we released that's not available on the market yet is Lumo Run, and this is a much more advanced sensor set. And what we're doing here is we're actually measuring running form. And we partnered with a university in the UK called Loughborough University, and they actually do a lot of sports research, and from that they defined 6 different metrics that relate to running form. Those include cadence, which is how many steps per minute you run; bounce, which is how high off the ground your foot's coming; braking, which is how hard you're landing, which is extremely important, especially for injury, because that's when a lot of injuries occur, is when people are landing, if they're landing improperly. And then also we have a lot of metrics around the hips, which are extremely important because a lot of the times people have issues with their knees, but it doesn't actually have anything to do with their knees. It has to do with imbalances in their hips. So we can detect things like how much movement you have going back and forth, how much you're leaning forward, and then also how much you're dropping with your hips. So some of the reasons that running form is really important, that is a running lab. That is where a lot of the research is typically done. It's cool to see that a lot of these technologies are making it out of the lab and to the head consumer. But one of the reasons form is really important is for running efficiency. If you're running more efficiently, then you're wasting less energy, and so you can go faster and you can go farther. And so running efficiency is extremely important. It's directly tied to form. Also, 80% of runners experience a lower extremity energy. Injury, say that. And so what happens is people end up getting hurt, they're using improper form, and often it means two different things. It means either you can't run at all, or it means time off of your feet, which for athletes is often a really big challenge. Lastly, the way that you get the data in the lab is a very cumbersome process. So you have the VO2 mask that you guys will probably recognize over there, but also what they typically have is we have these 3D cameras that are measuring people's form in real time. And the problem with that is, first of all, it's very expensive, it's very time consuming, and the sample sizes are really small. Usually you have people who are professional athletes who are going into these labs. Like the average runner doesn't really have access to this type of technology to get help on their running form. So one of the things that I think will be extremely exciting in the future, we're not there yet, but much like Lumo Lift and the database that we've been able to accumulate of posture data to this point, when we release Lumo Run, we'll start having a large database of running form posture, which is extremely important because up until this point, it's been very difficult to measure injury. You can't take somebody and put them in a lab and hurt them and then measure them. Like it's not a process that works. You have to look at video capture of people who've been injured during a race. And so it's very, very difficult to detect the sorts of things that lead to injury. But with large amounts of data in the future of different people in different environments, whether it's a real world environment or on a treadmill, things like that, you'll be able to see sort of the warning signs leading up to when people might get injured. And so by looking at that in aggregate, then you can provide feedback on an individual level to help an individual runner. So we're not at that level yet, but just a little bit of information from what we've seen. These are two different runners. This on the left is a recreational runner. Each of these colors represents their legs. So this is the movement of each of their legs. And you can see on the left side, the recreational runner, they have a lot of asymmetries. So one leg is moving differently than the other, which means that it's likely this person had an injury that hasn't completely recovered, because that's often what that is. Also, you can see that the data is somewhat more erratic. It's not as smooth and tight, especially when you compare it to the Olympic runner over here, who has this really nice, tight, symmetrical form. This is an Olympic runner who has incredible running efficiency. So one of the things that I'm excited about is to see where wearable technology is going, not just from the basic level, but how people are taking it to the next level. And I'm excited to see how we're just integrating it into our everyday lives to the point where we don't even think twice about it. So, thanks so much.
We can do one or two questions and then we have to move on. The other.
Are you following Esther Oakley at all?
Yeah.
How is that factoring in her method into your research?
So a lot of time people who do posture classes, they're designing it for the individual person. So for example, one of the reasons that we have the Lumo Lift set up so that you can calibrate it into what is considered your best posture is because everybody's posture isn't the same. So a lot of her systems are about working with the individual to find the perfect posture for them as an individual. This doesn't necessarily find the perfect posture as an individual. It makes you better than not terrible. You see what I mean? Like that's where we're getting to the 80%. It's like, okay, you don't get perfect posture. With a system with her, you would get to a point where it's like, okay, this is your perfect posture. This is how you train for it. This is how you maintain it. But we're trying to get you to the point where it's like, okay, you may not be perfect, but if you don't want to take posture classes, this gets you out of the worst of it.
Have you seen any evidence that her method works in the data?
We haven't done any experiments with her directly.
Talk a little bit about battery life and price point of the two products you mentioned.
Battery life, Lumo Lift is 5 days on a 2-hour charge. The Lumo Run is about a month's worth of run, so we're figuring that about 2 or 3 runs per week on a charge. And it's similar to the other apparel group where it's machine washable and excellent fabric. And has the 169 for the women's capris, 149 for the men's when they ship. But right now, I think they're both on sale for $99. And the sensor, we actually just 3 days ago announced that we're going to do a sensor version. In the beginning, we have the shorts themselves, and you slip the sensor into the shorts, and then there's conductive thread that goes around to the front, and you have button controls on the pants. But we had a lot of people who were really interested in using their own clothing. It's amazing how fussy people are about their own apparel. And anybody who's going into that industry, like, you will learn that. So but there were some challenges as far as placement and also algorithm development, but we were able to overcome those so we can offer a version. So that I think is going to retail around $100. I think it's $79.
All of the speakers tonight are offering a discount that you can find at the Meetup page, which is meetup.com/peakperformance. What is the discount that you're providing?
I think ours is 20.
Okay.
20 for the Lumo lift. I think Lumo run is just discounted right now. If you get it now,
That'll be the last question.
Just a follow-up question on the sensor, just the sensor version. Yeah, so they wouldn't be using conductive fabric. It would just be the main sensor part would be primarily wire that goes around, right?
So the main difference is the conductive thread that we use is for on-demand coaching. And so when you're running with the shorts, if you're wearing earphones, you actually get real-time coaching, giving you tips on how to improve your form. But if you don't, and we just there's different settings where depending on how much coaching you want to get, you can say how active you want the coaching to be. But if you have the pants, you can have an on-demand button where you can hit the button, and whatever you feel like, I'm running right now, and what exactly am I doing at this second button, and they'll give you that immediately challenge.
I guess I'm just trying to understand the difference between having a full pants in the Lumo versus just having the sensor. Like how much of the sensor is going to be moving? That's the question.
Not a lot. So it actually what it looks like. It's in a clip right now.
Oh, wow.
But this is what the sensor will look like. This is it. And we have it. It does have to be worn on your lower back though, right on the small lower back, because that's really important for measuring health improvement. But yeah, it's about that big, and it's just a single sensor. It's a very smart sensor because it's a single sensor.
Tansy, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We have a bunch of giveaways. All right, so this is